What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Funnel Vision Show, where we help performance-driven marketers level up their game. If you're an agency, then listen in, because I've got somebody today that is going to walk you through how he's been able to manage hundreds of millions of dollars in ad spend for his clients. We're going to talk about all sorts of stuff related to growing your agency and scaling your advertising budgets for your clients. It's going to be a lot of fun. My guest today is Jordan Bell. Jordan, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
I am very happy to have you. I'm looking forward to our conversation. As always, I don't overly like to kind of introduce my guests too much. I like them to tell me their humble or not so humble bragging rights. Basically, what have you been able to do for your clients? What have you been able to do for yourself? In other words, why should people tune in beyond the $100 million in advertising spend that you've been able to manage?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So I've been running digital agencies for the past 10 years or so. Prior to starting Agency Bell, I ran a sports advertising agency, pro sports, as well as a legal marketing agency. And eventually I started my own shop, the sole founder, that crazy journey that we go on. And the agency has changed a little bit over the years and have started on some new projects. But primarily, while we started in general digital marketing for lead generation type businesses, professional services, we eventually moved over to primarily advertising. So Google, Facebook, Meta, Bing, Instagram, some Snap and all that, and a little bit of LinkedIn. And one of the key areas that we differentiated in over the years was focusing on businesses that had CRM sales. So a lot of professional services, there were a lot of law firms, software as a service, not so much e-com, but anything that had a CRM where there's a sales team calling on those leads. And where we found that there was a need for some additional value was in optimizing ad campaigns towards the sales events that happen after all of the online conversion events happen. And where this really helped was by training the ad systems off of those events. We were able to systematically increase the quality of the leads using machine learning and automation. Additionally, we were able to show our clients how they could see full funnel, regardless of the ad system and the segmentations. They were able to see all the way through the funnel to the final closing of sales and signed contracts, which really became a game changer for some of the more competitive industries where you'd see cost per click up to $200 or $300 each. So it really improved the lead quality and kept those competitive budget wasting campaigns down. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been a very difficult journey. And along the way, I realized that part of my future focus was going to be in management training, operations, and some of the tech and data side. So that's a little bit where I'm going now. And now we're going to be opening up soon Academy Bell, which is going to be digital training and advanced training for visionary leaders and digital professionals.
Yeah, interesting. And we'll talk about Academy Bell in a minute. But it's true. Like at the end of the day, when you think about the full journey, most people, especially on the advertising side, they look at the cost per clicks. Maybe they'll look at some conversion events and they'll look at kind of those single conversion events, but they don't really kind of think about the full journey. So walk me through kind of your journey in terms of how you got to this stage of like, man, we need to really be thinking about optimizing for the sale, even if the sale happens a few months later. How did that happen? What was kind of that process like?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when I was sort of coming up in this agency, I always wanted to know what happened after we delivered a lead to whether it was a law firm or another professional service or any other type of company. And I found that from agency to client, the clients would sort of keep that information close to the chest. I understand why. Their data is valuable to them. They don't want an agency to share that information or their lists or whatnot. I always found, though, that if we could if we could analyze that information better, we could make significantly better decisions in terms of the targeting. So it's not just a lead, but also knowing that those types of leads became sales and had a higher lifetime value. But the journey to figuring all that information out and getting it from clients was so difficult. And even when we did get the data, we'd usually get it in these disparate lists that were hard to connect. In addition, we found that when we were trying to analyze the leads, and they'd come in from different areas, like a lead form, of course, then also a phone call or a live chat, we found that it was difficult to get the same kind of information per lead. And because of that, even if we did get some of the information back, the sales information back from the client, tracking it back to the original phone call or the live chat was significantly harder than tracking it back to the actual form field. We used all the UTM parameters, URL parameters, so we'd know from the forms. So I kind of went on this journey of saying, okay, every single lead, no matter how it comes in, we need to have that original attribution data, and we've actually got to be able to follow them through with unique IDs all the way through the funnel. So that led us to doing things like using automation, not just to automate the lead delivery, but we would get every parameter possible in these giant lead sheets that the clients never wanted, but we use them. But then we also needed the information back from the client from their CRM systems. And by matching those unique identifiers from those leads, we were able to start automating in real time to go, all right, what happened to that lead? As soon as it happens in that CRM, we're able to get it back on our sheet, which does a couple things. One, we were able to get real-time full funnel data, which is really cool. The dynamic reports that really become sales and marketing intelligence. So you got this combined marketing and sales team between agency and client that's really meant to be like as if they had the full unified team internally, but we're creating it as an agency, which is great. And the second is that in real time, we could then train the ad systems, not just off the lead events, but off the sales events. And the cool thing about that was that it allowed us to train the ad systems off of an event that normally wasn't available. And the biggest benefit of that was it naturally increased the lead quality and increased the likelihood of those leads of getting leads that are more signable. And the most interesting version of that ever that we happened was when we were doing a personal injury campaign, and we had no qualifying questions on the leads, on the lead forms, but they were assigning 35 to 40% of those leads when the industry average was around 5 to 7%. And so we realized that type of effect actually trains the ad system to avoid all of the competitive clicks, all the marketers, because you can't train it off of a signal, or you can't fake the signal of signing a contract. So it actually worked out really nicely, but it's hard to do.
Yeah, that's what I kind of wanted to dive a little bit deeper into here is how are you doing it? Like what are you doing, and what does the tech stack look like? How are you creating this kind of system to feed back to the ad platforms?
Definitely. Well, I was a Zapier nerd. Pretty much as soon as I discovered it, and I discovered it a little bit late, but as soon as I did, it was sort of like marketer's needle in the arm at that point, because I became an enterprise user very fast, and we were, of course, as a lead was being created, whether it was in Facebook or Google Ads or on a landing page, we would of course want to be able to send that to any CRM directly into the CRM, which of course became more and more common over time for most agencies. But then the other side of it was really about making sure that whenever there was a change in the client's CRM for that lead, we knew that we were getting the signal back and matching it back to our database. So we would have the record of the lead, and they would have a record of the lead. And as soon as we sent it in, we make sure we get the receipt back that says we've got this unique identifier, or we give them a unique identifier. Now, there's a little bit of coordination that has to happen, and you've got to work with the client to know, so that whatever status they choose, what that status means. So there has to be some consistency in the way they're using their CRM. This doesn't work for everyone, but if you have a good relationship with your client and your good budget, and everyone's on board with this whole machine learning improved lead quality, then there's a good reason for someone in their operations or tech or their sales leadership to make sure that not only are they using their CRM correctly, but that we're aligned with what each of those statuses and sub-statuses means. So we would have these charts that would basically say, if it was qualified but had this certain characteristic, then we would mark it as a certain conversion type. Think of it like think of it like the different stages past that lead. You've got a regular lead, a marketing qualified lead, which is usually the qualifying questions. But then after that, you've got a sales event, like, are they a sales qualified lead? Did they send them a contract or schedule a consultation? And then did they actually sign the deal? And those are three or more extra events that you can actually build optimization signals off of, as long as when that event comes back, the sales rep does the drop down. They're like, okay, they fill out a status, as long as you get that status back in real time. And that usually happens through like a webhook. And then we'd use like a lookup table or something. And then we send a bunch of automations that ping it back to Google or Facebook or Bing, wherever it is. There's a lot of steps there, and it took a while to sort it out. Plus, you have to rethink at that point, how do you actually optimize your ad campaigns to multiple sales signals? It's a different type of thinking in ad optimization, but it's kind of fun. And then you get into the value-based stuff and all that fun crap.
Yeah, the biggest challenge, like, so we do something very similar with Funnelytics, right? We create a Funnelytics user ID, and then somebody goes, and so a lot of times what we do with our clients is we'll create some hidden form fields on their whatever their forms. We pass the Funnelytics user ID so that it stitches the session, and then whenever happens, let's say a deal changes stage or and it goes to a deal one, for example, a webhook gets fired, it sends it back to Funnelytics and adds it to that person's profile. So we kind of do something very similar. What's challenging though is starting an ad campaign. And so walk me through how you guys launched ad campaigns and basically how you started to optimize, because you can't really go from, let's say I launch an ad campaign tomorrow, and I know the sales cycle is like 3 months, right? So I can't really set up an ad campaign that's going to optimize for conversions on a contract closed, because there's literally zero data for 3 months on that. So how did you guys kind of ramp up to this, and how do you guys look at your ad campaigns in that way?
Yeah, that's why these campaigns are tricky, and each approach is going to be a little different. I mean, I'll give you a couple examples. So you mentioned the 3 months to get to a deal one. That's a great example of a campaign where you might optimize, you might have some of that data in there later, but that may be more of a reporting thing. Like, you might get the deal one status, but it might be 3 or 4 or 5 months before you say, all right, all of those leads are fully worked, and now we're going to go back and do a full assessment. That's good for reporting purposes. And if you get that data back, you can do some really good analysis, because those deals are coming back in real time, even still, they're just taking a while. And I think you've kind of got a lot of that sorted out already. But from an optimization standpoint with training the ad systems, we typically will look at the earliest and most common events that are past the deal, that are past the lead stage. So let's say you've got your typical lead signal and then a marketing qualified lead signal. You might have like an additional value or a higher type of optimization or a higher conversion value for your MQL. But after that, there might be an immediate action like a demo or something like that, or a call booked, or a demo completed, or a sales rep marks it as a sales qualified lead. And those are going to be after the online session for that lead, but during the sales process. Well, that might happen within a couple days. And so rather than going all the way to deal one, we start optimizing to the early events that are consistent. Once it gets very inconsistent and it takes a while, those events are going to be a lot more volatile and a lot more difficult to optimize towards. So those are going to be more reporting events. But in the earlier on, you kind of pick the conversions that you know are going to be more frequent and earlier on, and that kind of becomes your target. Sometimes, and one more thing on there was that sometimes you'll use a combination of the online form for the event stages and the sales event. And sometimes you'll just use the sales event. And of course, as you can probably imagine, that's going to be based on volume and momentum. So you kind of like the velocity of your campaign. And then and then over time, sometimes you'll actually change it. So you might even remove the lower signals when you get enough of the higher signals. And that's a transitioning campaign at that point.
Cool. So if you were to kind of take your system in a sense and really kind of how you launch campaigns and optimize for campaigns, and you were kind of to turn it into a playbook, a step-by-step playbook, a 5-step playbook, whatever you want to kind of call it. What would that playbook look like if you were kind of off the top of your head? How would you break that down?
It's a great question. First, I think it would come down to understanding the flow of lead data, right? So there's and actually, let me ask you a question. When you say that, you mean a playbook for an agency or a playbook for a brand or both?
Yeah, I would say for an agency trying to deploy something like that.
Yeah. And that's great too, because a lot of agencies have wanted to do stuff like this, but it's been a number of reasons, or they have difficulty working with the clients on it. There's always a challenge. So first is understanding, do you have a client that has the capacity to do this, and do you want to go down this road? So it's really good for competitive industries, really good for when you've got a consistent CRM system and a process there. Call centers are really good for that. So the criteria for that would be if there's a CRM, if they're using it consistently, and if they're early stage sales events, like after the lead is delivered, that are relatively consistent and narrow the range of possibility, like the percent chance that they're actually going to start signing into deal one, or they get to deal one within like a week or so, let's say. So if that is all true, then there's a handful of things that an agency would start doing in order to head down this road. One is making sure that they understand the dynamics of delivering the lead with enough of and delivering the lead through automation and capturing all of those URL parameters. For Google, you're talking about the click ID at that point, because the click ID, of course, is what allows us to do the offline conversion. Now, I know that there's some additional factors that are coming into play now. We're uploading unique IDs with the enhanced conversions and with Facebook and all that stuff. So the methods will change over time. But in general, the ability to deliver a lead and capture all the URL parameters does a couple things. One, you're capturing that unique ID so that you can later on upload back into Google after the online events are done. And also, they're setting themselves up for ad data and lead data to be coming together into dynamic reports, which creates that marketing and sales intelligence that is really valuable when you start putting it into things like Tableau or Looker Studio. I know I talked about the optimization, but the reporting side of it, I mean, to set up that type of reporting where you've got lead data and ad data together, that becomes a superpower when you're using it, because you have the ability to drill down without needing to compare a bunch of reports, export things. You can really make it dynamic. And that just means getting the right data fast enough that you can optimize with a lot more consistency and a lot more precision, which I love. It's always about, if we had the data, we would know how to optimize. So it's like, well, if we can make the data, let's get it. So that's that first step, is just making sure the automation and then saving that data in a lead sheet or a data warehouse, right? The next is you have to have a relationship with the client where you're able to talk with whoever's running that CRM, whoever is working with that sales team. There's usually different folks, head of operations, operations manager, sales leads, or like a head of sales. It always depends on who's making the decisions. And then you usually have to work with like a tech person so that whatever their sales statuses are, you know that you're getting the signal back. It usually involves like a webhook or an integration with Zapier or Make.com or any of those things. And it's always a little bit different, but that part I would like write a big part of a playbook of saying the kinds of things you need to talk about in order to get those statuses back. And then you also need to know, what do those statuses mean? Getting to know your client and their sales stages, this is why this is important. Because once you get that status back, there could be like 24 or more sales statuses and sub statuses, and those have different implied values based on what they mean to the business. One interesting example there is, and I'll pause for a moment, but one interesting example was when we had disqualified leads with a law firm, but they were so close to being qualified that it was just something that a person searching wouldn't really even know that they weren't qualified. Like they were in an accident. But the person had just stopped, they just lost their insurance, but they were rear-ended. Well, in California, you can't sue. But for all intents and purposes, that person was injured and they were not at fault. So we would do things like still send some value to Google, even though they were not qualified by sales, because it was so close that we wanted to add some implied value along the way. I think of that like filling in gaps in the pyramid of the attribution pyramid. So those are interesting, and I think that there's also an interesting argument around implied values of leads, even if they don't work out. Had you not figured out that next step, what would that lead be worth? And that gets into an interesting topic around machine learning around values. But so far good.
Yeah, I mean, so basically, you're it's really a combination of two things: making sure you have the right data and making sure you have the right communication with the client, right?
You said it way better.
Yeah, at the end of the day, that's what we're really kind of saying, is just summarizing it into we must collect the data across the leads, and we must then ensure that the client goes through a process. So as we're coming up on time here, I always like to wrap up with, what is your number one as a marketer for all your years marketing, everything you've done, both seeing it on the client side, you being a marketer, marketing for yourself, marketing for your clients. What is the number one growth tactic that is for you right now? Like, man, if every business did this, I mean, it would make a massive impact.
Yeah. Spend more time talking to your customers. Um, like I have an opportunity to coach a lot of entrepreneurs. I do a show every year that's like a business competition for entrepreneurs. And so I get to be back in my element and coaching and a lot of different topics, operations, marketing, technology, management, all sorts of things. And it's really a lot of fun. And that's the thing that comes up almost all the time in any topic, really any topic is the question will come up of, someone will say, well, should I do this or this? And I say, well, what have you talked to your customers about? What's coming up with them? And usually the answer will be, well, I haven't talked to a lot of them, but though the entrepreneurs, and we're all guilty of this, will have this really strong theory about what the market wants. But then when we're asked the question of, well, what are the 20, 30, 50 people you've talked to in your target audience actually saying? It's usually crickets at that point. And we put so much time and energy into building our product and building the beautiful shiny box, only for us to discover and go like, well, why isn't it working? It must be the marketing campaign. When really, if we spent so much time understanding the needs of our audiences and really discovering, like digging into the problems that people have or the opportunities and building around those needs, then our marketing campaigns would be way easier. It would almost be an if you build it, they will come. And we'll find that our traction and our product market fit and our enthusiasm among our clients and customers will be way better. So my whole thing is for any entrepreneurs or marketers and product folks is make sure that you're talking and listening and getting out of our own heads that we built the perfect thing and realize we can't build the perfect thing unless we talk to our market and really, really listen.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really very, very valid growth strategy. I think a lot of people underestimate how important it is to talk to your audience and to understand their words and to, the best ads are the ads that basically repeat verbatim what your clients say to you in terms of a case study. And they work the best because basically you're speaking their exact language. So I appreciate that. Where can people learn more about you, Jordan?
Yeah, Jordan Daniel Bell on LinkedIn, agencybell.com, and soon it will be on academybell.com as well.
Awesome. And I'm looking forward to learning more about Academy Bell as well when it comes out, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.